The third and final of this afternoon's AP Stats videos is how to use the calculator to calculate the correlation coefficient, R. You'll of course know from the last section 3.1 notes that R has to be between -1 and 1. And if it's positive, that means that the data is trending upward linearly, at least. And if it's negative, it's trending. If it's R is negative, it's trending downward. And the closer it is to 1, the more linear it is. And there was a formula that I showed you really quickly in the book, not needed to use, just maybe needed to recognize. But luckily, the calculator will fairly quickly calculate R for. So I'm going to use the same data from the video I just made where we made a scatter plot. So if you don't have that data in your calculator, you need it. There's the data, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 70, 59, 68, 41, and 11. If you're watching these videos in order, like I'm making them in order, you hopefully still have that data in your calculator. But if not, you need it, the X's in L1 and the Y's in L2. If you don't know how to do that, go back and watch that video. So I drew this picture. Clearly, this data is trending downward. And I would argue that's fairly linear. So without knowing, one of the things we did last time was not precisely estimate R, but like ballpark, if this were a multiple choice question and it was either R equals 0.3 or R equals 0.7 or R equals -0.3 or R equals -0.7. If you had to pick one of those, that's an equal sign. I'm hoping you'd pick it's got to be negative, and that's fairly close. So that's given those choices, I would think it's got to be that one. Now, that's not exact, but it's trending downward and relatively linear. Like I could draw a line like that, and it fits it pretty well. We'll talk about best fit lines soon in this chapter. So now we're going to use the calculator to actually calculate that correlation coefficient. So you do need to have your data in L1 and L2. So if I go to stat enter, there I have the data. I put it there 10 minutes ago for my last video, but it's still there. Okay, so then go ahead and hit second quit to get out of where your lists are. So now I'm back to a blank screen. So in order to do this, fairly simple process. You're going to hit stat button. Then it says to hit calc. You're actually going to, when I hit stat, you're going to scroll one to the right to get to the calc, which is right there. So scroll one to the right, stat calc. And then I have lots of options. Scroll down. Notice number 4 says lin reg ax plus b. We don't want that. We want to scroll down. I think it's choice 9. I forget. Choice 8. It says lin reg a plus bx. That's actually doing some linear regression, which is actually a topic for like 3 days from now. And that's the form of a line it's going to give us. We don't need that. When you do lin reg a plus bx and now hit enter, notice it just says lin reg a plus bx. Now, listen carefully. If I just hit enter again, the calculator will assume that my data is in L1 and L2, which it is right now. So if I hit enter, it'll finish it. If the data were in other lists, like if for whatever reason you had your X's in L3 and your Y's in L4, after this, you'd have to type in L3, L4. I don't have to do that right now because my data is in L1 and L2. But I could type in L1, L2. I'll do that just to show you how to do it. The L1 and the L2 are just above the 1. Like above the 1 there, it says L1 in blue, and above the 2, it says L2. And right there above the 7, there's an actual button with a comma on it. So I could type in second 1, which gets the L1, comma second 2. So now it says lin reg a plus bx L1, comma L2. Again, had you ignored that part, it would have worked as long as your data, because the calculator defaults to L1, comma L2. Now I hit enter. It gives me lots of things. All I care about right now is that very last line. It says R equals negative 0.8766. That is the correlation between X and Y, negative 0.8766. R equals negative 0.8766. That somehow quantifies, that's a pretty strong linear negative correlation between X and Y, whatever X and Y happen to equal, or whatever they happen to represent. So There is your video for how to calculate the correlation coefficient. 3 videos today. One was just turning that diagnostic on thing, which we did once, we'll never do it again. Second one was how to make a scatter plot. Obviously, you need the data in L1 and L2 for both making a scatter plot and calculating R. Note that if you only need to find R, I would not have had to turn the stat plot on and create the scatter plot. Don't need to do that if my only goal is to find the correlation coefficient. So that is the video for finding the correlation coefficient. Bye-bye.